So, what can we do to become better listeners? At its core, listening in a one-on-one conversation is about taking an interest in another person and making them feel understood. There's no universally agreed upon definition of high-quality listening, but some recurring features include attentiveness, conveying understanding, and showing a positive intention towards the speaker. This doesn't mean you can simply go through the motions. Researchers have found that merely smiling and nodding at set intervals doesn't quite work. However, there is something slightly performative about listening in that it's important to show you're doing it. So, in addition to actively attending to a speaker's words, good listeners also use questions and body language that indicate their understanding and their desire to understand. This might feel awkward at first, and what's most effective might depend on your relationship with the speaker. But with time and practice you can internalize these basic behaviors.
Probably the most interesting fact about human development is the frontal cortex is the last part of the brain to fully maturity. It's not completely online until you are about 25 years old, which is mind-boggling to think about. What does that explain? That explains why adolescents are adolescent in their behavior. The sensation-seeking and the risk-taking, and the highs are higher and the lows are lower. Because the steadying frontal cortical hang there isn't fully up to speed yet and everything else is a gyroscope, out of control. And that's where the impulsivity is from, and that's where the extremes of behavior, and that's why most crime is committed by people at a stage whose frontal cortex is not fully developed yet. That is why most people who do astonishing, wondrously self-sacrificial things don't have a frontal cortex that's fully in gear yet either, and is not in a position to convince them yet at somebody else's problem. Look the other way. That's why young adults are exactly how they are. Because the frontal cortex isn't quite there yet, and what you have, as a result, is more adventurousness and more open to novelty and more likelihood of seeing somebody who is very different as in fact not to being that different after all, and more likely to grab a cudgel and smash in somebody's skull who happens to seem like of them, and everything, just the tone of everything is pushed up. One incredibly important implication of that is, if the frontal cortex is the last part of the brain to fully mature,
Discussions about climate change have been about sacrifice. I am here to tell you that climate solutions actually make a better city and a better quality of life for everyone. This is only the first of 5 lessons we have learned on our journey to become an emission-free city. And I think these lessons can be applied almost anywhere. So I like to share them. So lesson number 1. Confronting climate change is about creating better cities and better quality of life for everyone, including those kids in the kindergarten that don't have to share their days with noisy excavators. The second lesson is about being ambitious. In 2015, the City Council set a target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 95% by 2030 without purchasing any carbon offsets. So aiming for real reductions. Commitment to this goal changed our mindset. If we were going to reach this target, every department had to get active, figure out measures and finding out how to implement them. So second lesson, be ambitious. A target measured in years, not decades, provides no excuse for inaction.
But what's actually going on during that process? Well, firstly, drowning isn't like how you see it in the movies. There's not a lot of thrashing around or yells for help. Typically, it's a silent act, where the person's mouth sinks below the surface of the water and then reappears as they try to breathe. Once they can no longer hold their initial breath and start to hyperventilate, they might aspirate water, triggering something called a laryngospasm. This is where the person's vocal cords spasm, blocking their airways and protecting their lungs. However, it also inconveniently makes yelling for help significantly harder to do. Since the person can't take in any fresh air, their oxygen supply starts to fall, potentially leading to a condition called hypoxia. This is where there's not enough oxygen reaching the body's tissues. And eventually, as the person becomes unconscious, there's a relaxation of their airway, allowing their lungs to fill with water. Depending on how long the person has gone without air, varying levels of damage can occur. For example, a 2013 study found that the likelihood of surviving with little to no brain damage was very low after being submerged for 10 minutes or more. The lack of oxygen can also lead to cardiac arrest. So, basically what I'm saying is that drowning is absolutely terrifying.
One of the most important principles of Einstein's general relativity is the equivalence principle. It says that all objects, regardless of their mass and composition, would accelerate in the same manner in the same gravitational field when no external forces act upon them. Confused? Let me put it in simple words. Suppose you simultaneously drop a feather and a stone towards the ground from the same height in a perfectly resistance-less environment. Which one, according to you, will touch the ground first? One may think that as a stone is more massive than a fragile feather, it should experience more gravitational force and hit the ground first. But that's not the case, because as per the principle of equivalence, both objects should fall simultaneously on the ground. In other words, one can say that the inertial and gravitational mass of a body is proportional to each other, which makes the acceleration independent of the physical nature of the body. Now, what is the difference between inertial mass and gravitational mass? The mass that appears in Newton's second law of motion is termed inertial mass. It simply describes how difficult it is to accelerate an object. On the other hand, the mass that appears in Newton's universal law of gravitation is the gravitational mass. It depicts the strength with which gravity acts on a body.